We'll get her started. Okay. Welcome, everybody, to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick. I'm Rick, and today our guest is Nick Dunagan from Health4Heroes. And Nick is a U.S. Army combat veteran, certified personal trainer, and the founder and CEO of Health4Heroes. With over a decade of leadership in the nonprofit sector, he has worked alongside veterans and first responders to strengthen long-term health and resilience. His background spans military service, business operations and management, health promotion, and fitness, bridging performance, purpose, and sustainable well-being for those who serve. Welcome, Nick, to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick. Appreciate you coming on here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Rick.
Yeah, you're welcome. Nick, could you fill in the blanks that weren't in your bio and tell everybody a little bit about what Health4Heroes is?
Yeah, absolutely. Health4Heroes is a nonprofit organization serving currently right here in Northern Colorado. We were founded in Fort Collins in 2020, have expanded throughout the Northern Colorado region with plans to expand throughout the rest of the mountain region and eventually the United States.
Hmm.
We are a health and wellness community for veterans, first responders, and their families. Our whole mission is to empower these folks to take command of their health. So we give opportunities all year long by way of events and activities that are on the calendar. We provide resources to support health and wellness through our various community partnerships, as well as our scholarship program that pays for health and wellness services for these folks. We run a variety of programs. They all are intended to serve and be available all year long, as well as building that community aspect around all this. So, at some of our events and activities, whether that's a workout or yoga in the park or an educational workshop, veterans, first responders, and their families are able to come together for a healthy outlet and maybe learn something new or just have a good time in a healthy space. And we've been doing that, like I said, since 2020. So about a little over 5 years now. And we're just starting to get into some expansion into some other areas, which is really exciting.
Okay, cool. So tell our listeners, Nick, about your background and what actually got you to start Health4Heroes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ultimately, this is my personal experience. Both what I experienced personally, but also what I witnessed and saw amongst other people. I joined the army when I was 21 years old. Go fight for Uncle Sam and do the thing. I so that was 2009. I definitely went into the military a little bit unsure, but after a short while, I realized I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I had found my tribe, my environment, my mission,
Okay. Mhm.
and I was gung ho for it. My full intention was to serve 20 plus years in the military, and who knows what would have happened after that, but at least serving the 20 years. Well, unfortunately, after a combat tour in Afghanistan and a few things that were experienced there, it really just kind of led to a struggle for myself. I deployed to Afghanistan with the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One, in
Okay.
2011. Spent 12 months there in Khost Province, Afghanistan, and Gardez as well. So a couple different areas. Um, there were some things witnessed and experienced. A lot of it, I think, has to do with just the daily mortar attacks, the constant
Mm.
threat to life on a day-to-day basis, whether you're inside or outside the wire. It exists over there in those environments. And a small head injury and things that kind of go with that as well. But coming back from that deployment, I went right into training. I re-enlisted while I was in Afghanistan, and added paratrooper onto my training record.
Okay.
So as soon as I got back from deployment, I went off to what the Army calls WLC Warrior Leaders Course. It's a course they require you to take before stepping into a leadership role, which I
Okay.
was well on my way to doing. So I went through that course. I went right away to airborne school in Fort Benning, Georgia. dead middle of summer. My God, it's hot down here. But I did that. I passed airborne school. I was really proud of that. I had already been a part of one really well-known, prestigious unit.
Uh-huh.
And I was excited to be attached to the 82nd Airborne out of Fort Bragg, another
Okay.
very historic, prestigious unit.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, once I got to my unit at Bragg, though, after a handful of months, once the training all settled down, in hindsight now, I know what it was. PTSD really reared its ugly head
Mm.
for me, and I had been a newly promoted sergeant. I had soldiers under me. I was leading a squad. I was leading the motor pool in terms of managing all the vehicles and the convoys and things that were going out. So I had a lot of responsibility on my plate as a young E5. And I just started to break.
Mm.
But there was a year between my deployment and my symptoms. And because of that year with no, quote unquote, no issues,
Uh-huh.
I didn't connect the dots. I had no idea it was PTSD. I had no idea it was combat related. I just didn't know. All I knew was something was wrong. And my supervisors were coming to me telling me something was wrong and that I needed to square it away and take care of it fast.
Mm.
I did the only thing I really knew to do at the time, which was go make an appointment and go see the psychiatrist and talk to her about my mental health problems that I was going through. And I'll never forget, I sat down in her office. I had never met her in my entire life. She spent about 15 minutes with her back to me while I explained what was going on, and she typed away on her computer. After I finished explaining what was going on, she spun around in her chair and goes, "Got it. I understand what's happening here. Your prescriptions are waiting for you at the pharmacy." And she had prescribed me, again, inside of 15 minutes, she had prescribed me 4 or 5 life-changing drugs, 4 or 5 of the heaviest psychopharmaceuticals you can give a person for depression, anxiety, sleep, etc.
Wow.
And Rick, I walked out of her office supposed to go to the pharmacy across the clinic and fill these scripts. And I remember standing there between her office and the pharmacy and just thinking, man, that is not the help I was looking for. And so I left about face, left the clinic,
Mm.
um, did not fill those prescriptions. To this day, never have.
Well,
However,
good for you.
well, it's a feat for sure. And one thing I like to point out is I definitely recognize the need for pharmaceutical
Hmm.
intervention. I absolutely do, but it should not be a first step. It should never be a first step. I don't think. I don't believe that.
Yeah, I agree.
So I left the clinic, but I didn't have a healthy upbringing. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people who run off to join the military might be leaving something or getting away from something. I was doing that. I was getting away from a very bad environment. So I didn't have a healthy upbringing, so I didn't have skills in my toolbox to really employ in this situation. So I did the things I knew how to do, which was drink alcohol and avoid it,
Mm.
and not deal with the problems head on. So sadly, that only just worsened my symptoms. Go figure. Made everything worse, and ended up causing a problem that got me out of the military after 5 years instead of 25 years,
Mm.
or 25 years. And I was lost. I was completely lost on the outside. I was going through divorce, bankruptcy, early separation from the military, and moving across the country to try and resettle, kind of all at once. And again, I did not have healthy
That's a
coping
lot.
mechanisms. It is a lot for anybody. But I didn't have any healthy coping mechanisms. And so, when I moved, I just continued to do the same thing, ignore the problems, drink alcohol, party, self-medicate, whatever needed to be done to avoid the issue. I couldn't keep a job. And ultimately, I was dealing with what many people deal with when they get out of the military. And that's, untreated or even undiagnosed mental health issues. It's loss of identity, loss of
Yes.
purpose, loss of community, all of those things really. And I didn't, you don't recognize it at the time. But all those things were missing from my life. And so I truly felt like the best years of my life were behind me. I would never do anything as important as I did in the military. Nothing would bring me as much value as that did. And that I don't know where my life is going to go from here. And that lasted about a year and a half or close to two after getting out of the military in 2014. And I was down in Colorado Springs and I stumbled upon, I'm a person of faith now. I wasn't at the time really.
Okay.
But looking back, I didn't stumble upon the group. I was placed there for a reason to meet the group. But I say I stumbled upon this group at a local rock climbing gym. It was a veterans organization, and I just so happened to go there. A buddy of mine was like, "Hey, man, we got to get out of the house and go do something. You're not well, essentially." And I'm glad he did, because we just went to go rock climbing for no reason other than it sounded fun and easy. And there was this veterans organization there. And they could tell right away I was a veteran. You would just have that sense for each other.
Yeah.
And they started to impress themselves on me and tell me what their group was about. Excuse me. Tell me what their group was about and what all they did and stuff like that. And what they had done in this aspect was they worked out a deal with the rock climbing gym, because they're a nonprofit organization, that the rock climbing gym would, on Thursday nights from 5 to 7, it would cost $5 to come and climb with the group for a few hours. And it's typically about $35 to $40 for that type of thing. And so
Okay.
because they made it accessible and affordable, sorry about my notifications. I think I need to.
That's not a problem.
Okay. Because they made it affordable and accessible, I was able to go on a regular basis. And that was a big piece of it, because if it was actually $40 every week, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So all that to say, this group, I started hanging out with them and I got to tell them what I was struggling with. And the best thing I ever got from that group was normalization. And I'm telling someone what I'm struggling with my PTSD and all of these things, and can't keep a job and da 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 da. And these vets just kind of look at me and laugh and kind of snicker a little bit. And they just kind of say something along the lines of like, "Bro, you will be fine." We were all there. I was there a couple of years ago. This guy right next to me, he's just getting out of that in the last 6 months. We all go through it. But you need to do the work and process through it. You can't keep avoiding it and stuff like that, right? So
Uh-huh.
I started to feel from that conversation, it wasn't even the rock climbing or anything. It was just the group of like-minded people. I felt hope for the first time. I was like, oh, I can have a life again. I can manage this stuff. I can deal with it. So that kind of springboarded me to find a donation-based yoga studio. Again, affordability, accessibility by being donation-based was a key
Yeah.
component. I was able to do hot yoga a couple of times a week. And after a few months, I remember being in class and thinking, man, my knee doesn't hurt like it used to.
Mm.
Um, Go figure, like falling out of airplanes might bust your knees
Right.
up a little
Right.
bit.
With the engine still working.
Yeah. So I said, well, my knee pain doesn't hurt that much right now. Like my lower back pain is kind of subsiding, and my mental angst, most importantly, my mental angst is almost non-existent in this moment, right? While I'm in class. And I had this thought, like, this is powerful stuff.
Mm.
So that springboarded me further. I got into the gym, I got into nutrition, and ultimately it catalysted me to move from the Springs up to Fort Collins in 2017 to attend Colorado State University for their health and exercise science program.
Okay.
So that brought me up to Fort Collins. All along this time, I had been volunteering and engaging with other veterans organizations. All this time, I had heard from other first responders who were also veterans. Man, I'm so glad I'm a veteran too, because if I was just a first responder, I wouldn't have access to any of these services, any of
Mm-hmm.
these volunteer orgs, et cetera, et cetera. And that stuck with me. So after a few years of doing it with other people and for other people, I was presented an opportunity to found an organization here in Northern Colorado that serves these folks. And it made perfect sense to include the first responder group, a highly deserved and highly deserving group. I do not have to tell you that for sure. But the services needed to be offered. And again, along the way, I had been involved in all these different organizations and I had seen so many others that I wasn't involved in. And the big push was predominantly suicide prevention and predominantly for veterans.
Uh-huh.
And that never sat well with me. For those of us who never experienced suicidal ideation, but were down in the dumps at the lowest part of our life, regardless, we might not associate with a suicide prevention organization. And so, therefore, I might go unserved or I might miss opportunities.
Hmm.
Additionally, looking at suicide only is at the far end of the spectrum, and we want to prevent people from getting there.
Yeah.
And ideally build a relationship with them along the way through the community building, that if they ever did get there, they actually feel comfortable saying, hey, I'm struggling. Can you guys find me a resource? And we do, and we have, and we will continue to do that. But that was a big piece of how Health for Heroes came together. Was
Okay.
I want to do this different. Health and exercise and eating right and having a good social structure and a mission and purpose in life saved me from the depths of hell that I was, living in for a while. And I wanted to be able to put something together that offered that to, other people as well, and kind of cut a lot of the headache out of trying to figure it out on your own, because that's kind of what I was doing.
Okay.
And so Health for Heroes was founded in 2020 with that mission of empowering our veterans and first responders to take command of their health. Again, like I explained earlier, it's a health and wellness community. We absolutely intend to interrupt and reduce the suicide rates amongst this group of
All
people.
right.
It
Great.
is a problem. We
Mhm.
just intend to do that without having to place the emphasis on the negative. We intend to do that by getting people healthy and active, instead of focusing on suicide all the time, because there's power in suggestion, Rick. Like, if you just
Mhm.
keep constantly talking about it, I might consider, shoot, I don't know, am I? And we don't want that. So
Okay.
all that to say, we've taken a different approach. It's been going wildly successful for us here in northern Colorado, and we're just getting to the point where we're starting to have those talks about expansion to other areas, other regions, and get this mission out there further.
Yeah, cool. You mentioned several things that I want to come back to, and
Yeah.
I'll start with my most recent thought that I had while you were talking. A couple months back, I interviewed a retired fire chief out of British Columbia. His name is Arjuna George. His podcast is called Beneath the Helmet, and he wrote a book called Burnt Around the Edges. And Arjuna had me on as a guest on his podcast that aired last May. And Arjuna has done a lot of work with a fire EMS world, with burnout, which he experienced himself. And Silver Arrow Coaching is the name of his business. So you might find his book interesting to read,
Mm-hmm.
Around the Edges. But jumping back to a comment that you made, that for people who've never been in the military, they don't understand a lot. They'll sit around, they'll watch the Band of Brothers or something else, and then all of a sudden, their great Uncle Joe, was in the military, and they think that they know, and they really they don't have any clue. One of those things, and you hit on this, and you said being a young NCO. I, Nick, I think the majority of the civilian population has no idea, no clue how young people are in leadership positions in the military. I remember because I did the Air Force and then the Marines, and in
Yeah.
my stint in the Air Force, and when Lowry Air Force Base in Denver was open, it really struck me one day. I was what we refer to as the crew chief here in the civilian world. We call it the company officer. So I was a crew chief on an engine, and we had a brush fire on board the base. And so we went out and we're taking care of it. And on the other side of the fence is Denver Fire Department, their engine 19. And it struck me is I'm looking at those guys on the other side of the fence, and the guy in charge, the lieutenant in charge of that engine company, was considerably older than me.
Yeah.
Here I am. I'm 21 years old, and I'm in charge of this crew. And
Yeah.
so right now, as we're recording this here at the mid-February, there's quite a buildup again in the Mid East. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of young people that are launching aircraft off aircraft carriers. There's a lot of young people that are jumping out of airplanes, like you did, and a lot of young people who are in critical positions. And so I just wanted to emphasize that for our listeners who have never been in the military. There's a tremendous amount of responsibility placed on young people. However, with that being said, you mentioned the Warriors Leadership course.
Hmm.
There are avenues and methods that the military uses usually right out the get-go at boot camp to start teaching
Yep.
leadership. Oh, and
Yep.
so yeah, that. And then the other thing that I wanted to circle back on to Nick is you talked about separation. Like you wanted to stay for 20, but it didn't happen.
Yep.
Recently, I interviewed, her name's Hannah Gladich. She owns Colorado Coffee here in Loveland. And Hannah was a 10-year police officer with Loveland Police Department. And then through some circumstances, she couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a struggle for people like us. Yeah, I was discharged from the Marines because of knee injuries. And now all of a sudden, we're thrust out into the civilian world, whether it's military, police, fire, EMS, to where you had prepared long term, and now you hit it. It's that loss of camaraderie, that loss of purpose.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah, and it does. It creates issues. Now, retiring from the fire service, again, that that comes back. So with that being said, Nick, and from your experiences, could you explain to the people who are listening sense of purpose and how important that is once you separate from military, fire, police, EMS?
Yeah, absolutely, Rick. And I think that, an important point to make right out of the gate is that, every human being is intended to have purpose in their life, whether that's getting up and taking care of their kids, their grandma. The purpose usually shifts throughout life on what their main
Mhm.
focus is. It might be motherhood at one point in time, it might be career in another point in time, et cetera, et cetera. So it definitely applies to everyone. I think everyone can, understand the idea that without a purpose in life, we're kind of directionless. We're just flopping in the wind.
Yeah.
That's not good for anybody. That said, when you enter the military, or, I don't want to speak for first responders, you can for sure. But at least on the military side, it's an indoctrination. And so um, the sense of mission and purpose and pride and everything, whether you had it when you got there, you definitely had it 100x, 1,000x when you left there,
Yeah.
even just leaving boot camp. And so there's an insane amount of effort and time that goes into indoctrinating our people when they go into the military and giving them that sense of mission and purpose, because in that sense, outside of the civilian sector, in the military sense, we need you to be 100% in on this, no
Yeah.
questions asked, one team, one fight, right? If one spoke in the wheel is broken, the whole system is breaking.
Mhm.
So that lays really heavy on people who do join a service. Not only that, I think most people who join service of some sort have that already like in their DNA. Whether they figured it out after the fact or they knew it going into it, I think they have it in their DNA to serve a
Yeah.
bigger purpose.
I agree.
So, all that to say, it hits a lot harder for a service member when they get out of their service, whether it's, in a timely matter like retirement, or whether it's in a quick hurry because you're getting pushed out of the military early or something like that. But it hits really hard to not have that purpose and that mission again. And being around the people who get it, the like-minded people. So, I
Yeah.
mean, the things that come, with Health for Heroes, some of the number one things people say when they're joining our organization is they're looking for community again, and they're looking for a purpose. So they get involved in volunteer leadership opportunities that we offer. But I think that's the point to make, Rick, is like everyone does get what having a purpose can do for someone's life. I think what they might not get is how much more exponential that is for a service member when they get out, and how crucial and vital it is for them to get that again in a timely manner
Yes.
on exit of service to prevent a lot of the spiraling and downfall that can come from not knowing where to go or what to do and feeling like, feeling hopeless or even worthless or any of that
Hmm.
type of stuff. Those are real emotions that we feel.
Uh,
So,
mm,
yeah, I think that probably covers that.
yeah, yeah, that's good. And and that's tied in with the identity piece.
Yeah.
When you're used to wearing a uniform and people identify by that uniform, we identify by that uniform, and all too often, uh, we can identify too much. So
Way
that
too
when
much.
we separate from the military or separate like from the fire service, in my case, it's like, wow, I don't have that anymore. And then also, my experience when I came out of the Marine Corps, coming back to civilian life, it's like this is one jacked up civilian world. These people don't know what to do. They don't follow orders.
Yep.
They don't pay attention to detail. I mean, it was, things like that. It's like
It's
this is screwed up.
frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating. And when I got in the fire department, I don't know how many times I heard, well, this isn't the Marine Corps. This isn't the Marine Corps. I had a captain kept telling me that. One time I finally told him, I said, well, you know what? If this was run more like the Marine Corps, things would be a lot smoother.
Yeah. Yeah, well, maybe it should be.
Yeah, and it's just really, really different. And um, we hired a guy. He was a combat vet, 101st Airborne, and he was very quiet. Yeah, and he was on my shift when I was a battalion chief. So I had a captain that was riding with me. I was training him up so he could start functioning as an acting battalion chief. So I said, "Hey, let's go out to the station. This fella, he had been through the recruit academy. Now he's assigned out to Station 5. So we go out there and sit there and poured a cup of coffee. And Uriel is his name. And we just started talking. And I mean, you know how it is. You click with a vet. And we
Yep.
just kept talking and talking, going back and forth. And I said, well, hey, it's time, we need to move on. I went back down to Station 1, and a few minutes later, the phone rang. And it was the lieutenant out of Station 5. And he said, I don't know what happened here. He said, that man's hardly talked since he came out of the academy. He's so quiet. How in the world? What happened? I said, it's easy. We're veterans. We connected. And that's what you talked about, is that sense of camaraderie, that even though two different branches, different experiences, it's that common bond of being a veteran.
Yeah, and he might have felt after that conversation more empowered because he feels like there's, he's got a teammate on the team.
Yes.
And so he feels a little more open to speaking more or taking action or whatever that is. And yeah,
Yeah,
it can be as simple as just connecting with another like-minded person to really make a huge change one way or another. It's really simple, but we have to
it
be
is.
intentional about having those conversations and
Absolutely.
making it to the event or the activity to have the conversation to then get unstuck, if you will.
Yeah, the church that we go to in Fort Collins has a number of veterans. And just this past Sunday, I've got a little pin I wear on my vest that says Honorable Discharge, U.S. Marine Corps. And there was a husband and wife behind us. And as we're leaving, I was talking to him, and he leaned down and he looked at the pin. Well, he was a veteran himself, security forces in the Air Force. And so, hey, we got a connection there. But then also because my son-in-law Nick is working on his 22nd year in the Air Force. He's going to be
Yep.
retiring this year in security forces. So it's that connection. But I like the word you said is intentional, being intentional.
Yep.
And the church that we go to, it's a Front Range Baptist Church in Fort Collins. There's an incredible number of veterans that go to church there. And my wife and family were all very happy to say that on Veterans Day, the church, Pastor Miller, he recognizes the veterans. They go out of their way to recognize the veterans, and
Wonderful.
that is something that is really great. But I definitely want to touch on, because this episode will air at the beginning of June, but I want to touch on the Guardian Games. Could you tell
Yeah.
everybody what the Guardian Games is and what happens with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Guardian Games is kind of our flagship fundraising event. It's hosted every year in Loveland, Colorado, right at the Loveland Sports Park. We kind of do a takeover of their main championship field area, and we host our military and first responder inspired fitness competition. And so we sell sponsorships and all kinds of stuff to really try and raise a lot of money to support our programs throughout the year. And at that event, it is Saturday, June 13th. And at that event, there's athletes compete across a series of events. They're all designed to push their limits, test their mental fortitude. There's a military and first responder kind of themed influence to a lot of the workouts and things like that. The biggest, um, the biggest piece of that military first responder piece that we tie is that it's a team competition. So you do everything in pairs with a buddy.
Okay.
And so you work throughout the day through these different events, and it all culminates into a big, kind of like some people might know what High Rocks is. It's gaining popularity, but it's a fitness race. So you're
Mm.
racing through different stations that all have a different workout planned. So it's really tough. It's in June, so the middle of summer in Colorado. It gets really, really hot on the turf. So being out in the elements, oftentimes we've heard people say, man, you guys got to pick a different month for this. It's too hot out here or something like that. And my response is just, do you think our responders get to choose what the weather is when they're working?
Right,
Do you think our
right.
military gets to choose and work in ideal conditions? I said, no, this is meant to reflect how hard it is to do that job in some form or fashion. And then the meaning behind it, knowing that they're out there supporting this organization, that they're supporting the health and wellness of local heroes. People really get behind the meaning of the competition because there's a ton of fitness competitions out there,
Yeah,
of course, right? But not all of them are tied to a mission as important as this, and not all of them are put on by the organization themselves. So this is a big lift for us every year. It gets bigger and bigger in terms of what we're bringing to the table and how the event kind of plays out. So we have an Air Force Security Forces veteran who plans and programs all of the workouts. His name's Clayton Foster. He's been doing that for years for us. And it's just a great time. Most people get really excited about the workout events. Again, they're challenging, but they are doable for most everybody. You do not have to be in the best shape of your life. You do not have to be a first responder or a military veteran to participate in Guardian Games. It is a community event designed to bring the community together and show the veterans and first responders in the area that this community does support them. They back them. They are appreciated, and they are recognized. And so that's a big piece of what this event does. We bring in sponsors. There's a DJ. The DJ is actually really cool. He's a core piece of the event. He does all of the Broncos pregame parties that they do at the stadium. He's the official DJ for them. So
okay.
he's a really, really quality guy. He brings a lot of value to the event. It's fun, it's high energy, and it's just a great, great day. And again, like I mentioned, there's a ton of, athlete. You can sign up to be an athlete and compete. You can be a volunteer. We've got a ton of volunteer needs for that event. And we have sponsorship opportunities for businesses who want to get involved in supporting it as well. So
Okay.
yeah, it's a great event every year.
And do you still run the vendor displays in the parking lot?
That's one piece that we're switching up this year, Rick. And I know that you've participated in that in
Mhm.
years past, and we've definitely loved having that aspect. Just full transparency. I mean, because it doesn't it doesn't help anything to make us sound like we've got it all together. No one has it all together. We were having a hard time getting public attendance outside of the people that were attending the event for the reasons, whether they were a
Uh-huh.
sponsor or an athlete. Their family members would come, but we had a really hard time getting enough people into that vendor expo to make it worthwhile for the vendors. And
Uh-huh.
so to spare everybody the hanging out in a hot asphalt parking lot for hours and not potentially getting really much eyes on your organization, we nixed that this year.
Okay.
And we're partnering with iHeartMedia to run a ton of radio advertisements
All
to
right.
build up that public
Mhm.
attendance. And so, hopes is this year, everything is going to be on the field. So, nothing up in the parking lot anymore. We
Okay.
do have space for some community sponsorships at a really low cost entry to be down there on the field with us. But the idea is condense it down onto the field, bring
Mhm.
everybody down there for a fun time, and start to build it back out and add that back in as we get more and more public attendance on this. It's really hard to compete in the market with all these events going on. People have so many choices and
Imagine.
options, so
Yeah.
it's a challenge for sure.
Yep. And that again is June 13th at the Loveland Sports Park. It's on North Boyd Lake Avenue here
Yeah,
in Loveland. And so, as we get ready to wrap this up, Nick, you talked about earlier expanding, and you're here in
yeah,
northern Colorado. So, could you talk a little bit about the expansion? And for we have more than just firefighters that listen to this. I know we have some police
yeah.
officers. We have people who aren't even in emergency services at all. So could you talk a little bit about the expansion and for the people who are listening, who is eligible to come into Health for Heroes right now because of your geographical location?
Yeah, absolutely, Rick. So, right now we're serving live and in person here in northern Colorado. We've got members spread throughout, all the way from Longmont, Boulder area up to South Wyoming in the Cheyenne area.
Okay.
So, we're covering a lot of northern Colorado with our physical in person activities. In terms of expansion, we are beginning to offer programs and services online. And so that will open us up to be able to serve across the nation through some of those
Okay.
programs. But we will always maintain a physical presence in the areas that we operate. And so right now we have that physical presence in Northern Colorado. We have peer activity leaders, which I mentioned earlier, volunteer leadership opportunities. You know, a lot of the folks that want to get involved because we serve all military, veterans, first responders, and their families. So, regardless of you could have been an EMT in Boston 20 years ago, if you relate to this and you want to be a part of this group, we are here for you. We serve active military, guard, and reserves, regardless of discharge status or anything like that. So we're really open to the entire
Okay.
military and first responder community. All those folks can take advantage of our stuff right here in Northern Colorado, and soon they'll be able to take advantage of some of that stuff online. In terms of a physical presence expansion, our next, we have our sights set on getting down into the Denver area with a chapter
Okay.
and firing up those peer activities down there. And then through the rest of the mountain region and then the United States as it starts to make sense. But we're going to take it real slow, Rick. We're not here to have big numbers and low impact. We're absolutely doing this because the mission matters and we want the folks that are involved in our organization to feel the impact and notice the changes in their health as they continue to engage with the organization. So that said, we're not going to expand too fast. We want to keep all under control. We'll test out the Denver market and then we'll go from there.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Nick. As we close this up, is there anything else that you would like to add?
I just want to say, thank you for, creating this platform and allowing folks like me to come on and share a little bit.
Welcome.
I listened to a bit of Hannah's podcast, and then I so happened to meet her
Oh, cool.
just a few days after that aired. So it's a really helpful podcast that you have here, and I just appreciate
Thank
you
you.
having me on.
Yeah, thank you. And I will have the Health for Heroes website in the show notes so people can connect with that.
Yeah,
So, Nick, thank you for coming on. Oh, and by the way, folks, I had met Nick through a networking opportunity, and it was probably 2020, 2021. So that's how we connected there. And so, Nick, thanks for coming on today. And folks, if you've liked this episode, please share, pass it on, subscribe. And as I just mentioned, I'll have the website for Health for Heroes in the show notes, and my website is in there as well that you could go to see the services that I offer. And then also at my website, you could connect to my leadership blog. I post that weekly on Monday, and then it gets posted out on LinkedIn on Wednesdays, and then the Firefighters Leadership Network group in Facebook. You do have to be a firefighter of some sort, volunteer, paid, retired, military to come into that. So, with that being said, thank you everybody for joining us today on Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Rick.